So I'm upset. I'm like, oh my God, my money. And I'm like, oh my God, they're taking advantage of me. Can you believe they said this to me? I walked away from that conversation a little peeved because I was like, whose side are you on? Where I internally want someone to pat me on the back and go, good job, you did it, right? But I hadn't realized that at that time, right? There are family members that I haven't seen, and let's not even sugarcoat it. I haven't seen my father since I was 12. Trauma! Welcome back to the channel. It is your resident internet psychic medium and spiritual advisor, Mystic Rain, and we are back in my kitchen because I had another epiphany and I've learned another lesson. And so I want to discuss that with you. So I have learned an incredibly big lesson recently about discernment and the need for discernment and how to practice better discernment. And the reason for that is because I was recently disappointed by somebody that is actually incredibly close to me. And after processing it, because I was really, really hurt about it for a few days, I realized that we had only gotten to that situation because I let it go there, not because they did it. So much of that could have been avoided, but it wasn't avoided because of me, right? And that required that I work out some shadowy aspects of myself that I didn't realize that I had at that moment. So essentially, what happened, this particular person who happens to be a family member, I feel took advantage of me, took advantage of my time, took advantage of my money, took advantage of my kindness. So much so to the point where there was like a solid month where I would just get a request. Like, for example, I would check my phone and it would be like a Zelle request for like $100. And there was like no conversation that was had prior, right? So at no point in time did this person like call and say, hey, I'm having a really hard time. Could you help me? Do you mind helping me? Please help me. Like none of that was a conversation. It was literally like a Zelle request for $100, right? Or the one time that they did call me, they would be like, I need $100. It was never like, hey, can I talk to you about something? I'm like having a bit of a hard time right now. And like, do you mind helping me out? It was literally like whenever they needed money, they would just text me, like, I need $100, almost as if I was like an ATM machine. And I would give it to them. And initially, it didn't bother me because I recognized, at least I felt at that time, and I realize now I shouldn't have done that because I was creating an intention for somebody when that may have not been their intention. But at that time, I had thought to myself, well, they wouldn't ask for it if they didn't need it. What I realized now was that they never asked, right? What I realized now was that they kind of demanded it or expected it. There was never a moment where they were like, can you spare some money? It was always like, I need this, so give it to me. And that happened 3 or 4 times in like a month period. And each time the number was $100. In addition to that, there was also a situation with this person where they were like, hey, I have some business that I need to take care of in Colorado, but I can't go. I need you to go take care of this business for me. Because they're a family member, right? And so the idea of me going in that person's place wasn't like weird to me at that time. Like now that I think about it, I'm like, who does that? But like at that time I was like, oh, that's not weird. They were like, well, I can't do it. I have business in Colorado. I need you to go do it. And when I had asked them why they couldn't do it, they were like, well, I don't have the money, so I need you to go do it. And then so I was like, okay. And then they were like, by the way, it's for a week. I need you to go to Colorado for a week. And then what I started to realize was that, like, okay, they don't have any money, so they can't take care of their own business, so they need me to go in their place, but it's for a week. And then I was like, first of all, who's paying for that? So that means I'm expected to pay for a week of accommodations out of my own pocket. I am expected to pay for my own flight to Colorado and back out of my own pocket. And then I'm also expected to pay for like food and things that I need while I'm there out of my own pocket. And then because it's really to take care of your business, I'm also working while I'm there doing something that you're supposed to be doing. And I'm not getting any benefit from this. Also, during this week, this person knew that I actually had leave from work. And when they had asked me, hey, what are you doing around that time? I said, well, I have leave. And they went, great. This is what I need you to do. Go to Colorado. There was no like, well, what are you doing for your leave? How do you want to spend your time off? Oh, are you going to be relaxing? It was like, oh, great. You have a free moment in your calendar. I'm going to fill it with things and I'm going to send you. And then you have to pay for everything. And like, I'm saying it out loud. And I recognize that like some of you are going to be listening to this like, what? I'm also saying that to myself now in my head because now I can hear it. But like at that time, if for some reason it wasn't, I don't know, guys, it just didn't like click for some reason. I was just like, okay, I guess like if I can help you out. And then when time would pass, I would realize that like it just wasn't going to work for me for whatever reason, right? And so I tried to tell this person, hey, don't think I could go to Colorado. I got X, Y, and Z going on. I've got this project that I'm working on. My deadline is in August. Do you want me to go to Colorado in July? And they had wanted me to go to Colorado the first week of July. So actually, at the time of recording, I should actually be in Colorado right now. And with the issue that I was having was that the last month of working prior to my leave was incredibly busy because I knew I was going on leave. And that last week, I was working like 16-hour days. So I was exhausted by the time I had finished. Then I have this project that I'm working on, which is actually the project that I had told you guys about earlier, that I still can't tell you specifically what it is yet, but I'm working on it. And I'm accountable to a different group of people. It's not just me working on it. Like I have a deadline and I have like people that are looking for me saying, hey, where's that thing? Where's that product? What are you doing? How far along are you? Are you almost finished? So I have like responsibilities. And so I said, look, I don't think that I can do this because of all of these things going on. And that person was like, oh, but I just go for a week. Just go for a week. It's not that big of a deal. Just go for a week. And I'm like, no, no, no. Like, I don't think you understand. The way my schedule is working out is not looking great for me. I have like other things going on. Oh no, no, just go for, okay, fine. Go for a couple of days. And I'm like, I don't think you're hearing me. I don't think I can go. Well, anyway, the day comes, I just wrap up from work. And the day after I wrap up from working, their expectation of me was that I was going to fly out immediately that day of. And so I had spoken to this person on the phone. I said, look, I'm not feeling good. I have just worked all those hours. I actually think I'm getting sick. My throat is really sore right now. I just need to rest. And they just kind of was like, okay. And then, but then there was like this like thing of like, well, you owe X amount of money because I told so-and-so that you were going in my place. And now there's like this bill that's due and like you owe this money. And then the money that I supposedly owed was like over like $600, a car note payment. And I remember thinking, well, that's so bizarre because like, I'm not going. Like, how do I owe like over $600 and I'm not going? I've been trying to tell you that like, I don't think I can go. I'm not going. How do I owe this money to like, okay, whatever. Anyway, because I know that this thing was really important to this person, I was like, okay, I know you're having a financially difficult time. I'll try to see what I can do in order to help you out because I know it's important to you. And like, at that time, I really, in my mind, I was like, it's not a problem, right? But I recognize now that like I was literally trying to figure out how to reorganize my own personal finances in order to help this person out, almost to the point where it was now a detriment to my finances. About a week prior to that, this person was also moving. Like when I tell you, it was just chaos. Like this person was also moving and then needed help with paying rent because they were moving out of one place, which they owed rent on. And then they were moving into another place, which was then like the new rent, like that first month down when you move into a place. And they were short money. So they said, hey, I'm going to come by your house. I'm going to give you cash and what I have. And I need you to go online and pay my rent for me. And when I counted the cash is like almost $300 short. So when I ended up paying the rent for this person, I ended up paying like $300 on that person's behalf that I still have not gotten back, by the way. And then not to mention some of those $100 Zelle requests, I also have not gotten back. And so I have all of the $300 plus the couple $100 in the Zelle requests that I have not gotten back. And then somehow, some way ended up owing $600, which for something that I'm not going to, because this person was like, no, you're going to go in my place, and didn't even ask me whether or not that was okay with me. And then when that didn't work out, and then they had something else that they wanted me to do, which was separate from all of this, and I didn't do it. Then they sent me this long text message about how I'm unreliable and they can't lean on me and how they don't want to talk to me. And it was like long with exclamation points in it. And it was a text message that was scolding me. And then I remember being so hurt. And I remember like, I don't know, maybe for like 2 or 3 days, because this is recent, or like 2 or 3 days, like I cried about it. I didn't even look at my phone because I didn't want to pick up my phone, and there's like another text message of them yelling at me, or like numerous missed calls. And I was so hurt because I thought to myself, I've been trying so hard to like help you, almost to the detriment of myself and my own my own finances. Not to mention the fact that like I'm in the process of like getting married. You know that. And then when you're getting married and you're combining lives, that's not cheap. I mean, I wish somebody would have told me that, but like getting married is actually kind of expensive. Yeah. So anyway, so my money, because I've earned it, has been earmarked for other things, right? And I'm over here trying to help you out, giving you all of my money. You're not you're not saying thank you. You're just taking it from me. You're not like, you're not grateful. You're not appreciative of it. And then the moment I stop doing what you wanted me to do, then you're mad at me. And the funniest thing is, the reason why I stopped doing what they wanted me to do was not because I actually stopped doing it. It was actually a mistake. They had tried to reach out to me to get me to do something, and I wasn't responding to them. And they took that as I was ignoring them. I wasn't ignoring them. Legitimately, what happened was, it was the first of the month, and I had forgot to pay my phone bill. And my phone was cut off. I hadn't actually realized I forgot to pay my phone bill, because in Wi-Fi era, like you can still use your phone as long as you have internet, and my phone was still going off. And so I thought my phone was working. I hadn't realized I hadn't paid the bill. So by the time I paid the bill and this person was able to get in contact with me, they had interpreted that as, oh, you're ignoring me. How dare you ignore me? I'm asking you to do something. They think they're asking. They're not really asking. They're really demanding. And you're not doing that. You're not showing up for me. How dare you? And it was all these exclamation points, and it was just a lot for me. And I remember being so upset because I remember thinking, I didn't have to do any of this. You didn't say sorry, not one. You didn't ask me not one time. Not sorry. You didn't ask me not one time. You didn't say please not one time. You didn't say thank you not one time. You just been taking from me. How dare you? How could you? And then I went into like this spiral for like a day or two, where I was like, I cannot believe this person would do this to me. And I cannot believe I'm not good enough for this person. I cannot believe that what I gave this person wasn't good enough. That for whatever reason, they're not accepting of it, whatever. And then I had to like take a step back and then be like, why are you receiving that as that person thinks you're not good enough, or that person thinks that what you were doing wasn't good enough for them? Instead of doing what most people would do in that situation and be like, well, fuck you then, right? And run me my money. That's what a lot of people would do in that situation. But for some reason, for me, in that situation, I was like, oh my God, I'm not good enough. You don't think I'm good enough? Why not? And when I realized after thinking about it, was like, oh, you were actually looking for their approval. And that was hard for me, because I like pride myself on being the type of person that gets approval from myself, and I don't care about approval from anybody else. And then it like seeps out of me from time to time. Then I catch it and I'm like, whoa, I don't even know where that came from. And when I started doing the digging, this person that I was seeking this approval from has actually been someone who throughout my life hasn't really approved that much of me. And so I hadn't realized that I had ended up in this cycle with this person, where me giving them money or giving them my stuff or giving them what I had was my way of seeking their approval, for them saying, all right, finally you're good enough because you did enough for me. Or finally you're good enough because you gave me enough, or whatever. That's the cycle that I was in, and I just didn't see it at that time. And because I was doing that, I created a situation where I was being incredibly vulnerable. And then that through that vulnerability, that person was able to at that time, I would interpret it as like an attack, right? Me. And then it was an incredibly hurtful experience. And then, but this brings me all the way back to like what I said earlier about I learned something and like when it comes to discernment, I have always been the type of person that's like, when you do good things, you get good things back. You may not get it that day or that month or that year, but at some point in time, the universe will level itself out and then you'll get something good back. And so, in my mind, when I was doing that, when I was giving them all of my money, in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm doing a good thing. So, therefore, at some point, I'll be rewarded by the universe later down the line and I will get something good back, right? Because I'm doing a good thing now. And I don't know why that's how it figured itself out in my brain, but that's what happened. And but then when that happened and then we had that conflict, I was like, well, what the fuck is the point of doing good things if you're not getting good things back, if you're just getting shitted on in the process, right? But then the lesson of discernment came in because what I realized was, yeah, okay, the universe has a way of balancing itself out, but you are also part of the balancing act, meaning that you also have an ability to choose for yourself what things you actually want to balance out, right? If you want to balance out good deeds, you can balance out good deeds. However, when you are committing good deeds, do you want to be committing them in the first place? Or do you want to be committing them towards the person that you're committing them to? Oh, or do you want to be committing them to the person that you are committing them to, right? It's like yeah, you can do something good, but like where is the good going, and did you want it directed there, or are you only doing something good because you think you had to do it? And this comes back to like the idea of people pleasing. A lot of people fall into this pattern where they're pleasing people and they know that they're doing it, but they think that they're doing a good thing and they hope that it's okay in the end or whatever, not realizing that the person that they're pleasing, they didn't even want to please in the first place. So yeah, the scales eventually balance out, but did you want it to balance out like that? Did you want it to balance out in a way that required you to compromise yourself, your happiness, your dignity, your integrity, your money in order for that particular scale to balance out? Maybe that particular scale of balancing out isn't worth it. Maybe you don't want it. Maybe you don't care about it or something like that. And that's what I had to ask myself. And then I also had to realize this person only got into the habit of taking your money because you gave it to them. You cannot be mad at this person for not asking you for money and then just sending you random $100 out requests when the last time they did it, they were successful. And the time they did it before that, they were successful. Well, how is that now their fault, right? Now, do I think that like it was like, oh, they took advantage? Yeah. Do I think it was somewhat manipulative? Yeah. Do I think that they are conscious of that? Yes and no. No, more so because I know this person is not necessarily as conscious as I am. And so this person has a pattern of behavior that has worked for them in the past. And so they weren't doing anything but acting out their normal pattern of behavior, which I knew about. It wasn't new to me that they have a tendency to do this. Yet, for whatever reason, I made the decision due to poor discernment to engage with them in that cycle, and then was confused as to how I got bit in the end. Because I made the decision to do that. It wasn't their decision. It was my decision. It wasn't their decision to bite me. It was my decision to bite me. And I hadn't realized that. And then when I started thinking about that, I started to realize all the times in my life where I have given more to myself to somebody than what they actually deserve to actually have from me. And how so much of that has been through needing approval, but not necessarily being aware at that time that that was what I was searching for. And what I had realized for myself personally is that I have a tendency to do that with material things, particularly in money. And what I realized from there, because I'm in my like inner teenage era, right? I had to figure out like where that actually came from. And I had realized that like growing up because we had nothing, and growing up because my mother had nothing, and seeing her always really needing help, but never asking anybody for help from her, or seeing her ask for help a few times and then people throw it in her face, right? Somehow I internalized that of feeling like if I was ever in a situation when I got older, where I had the ability to help somebody, that I would do that. What I have realized now is that part of why I do that is because I want someone to see I grew up. It's almost like, see, I grew up now. I can do it now. I got it now. I accomplished something. I came back. And now I can be of resource to you. It's like a weird approval thing on that kind of front, because where I internally want someone to pat me on the back and go, good job, you did it, right? But I hadn't realized that at that time, right? There are family members that I haven't seen, and let's not even sugarcoat it. I haven't seen my father since I was 12. Trauma! And this is one cycle where it plays out in. I can tell you guys this because I don't even think he knows that I have a channel, nor he's so old he wouldn't even know how to find it anyway. But yeah, I haven't seen him since I was 12. He wasn't like a type of person that was actively trying to be engaged in my life. Him and my mother went separate ways. My mother took me. He went his own way. He then, got remarried, accepted her children, but didn't accept 2 children that he had, and moved on with his life. And then anyway, he's old now, and like none of those people that he accepted are actually singing about him anymore. And so guess who's on my payroll? Him. And so every month he gets money from me, and I haven't even seen this person since I was like 12 years old, and I'm in my 30s. And my fiance said to me, "Why do you do that?" And I was like, "What? How dare you ask me this question?" Right? And then I played it up to the fact that like, because we are not of the same race. My fiance is actually Korean, and so I played it off to like, "Oh, you don't understand Black culture" type thing. And he was like, no, that's not culture. He was like, that's them taking advantage of you. That's not culture. He was like, I know what it means to take care of family. Like, that's not what they're doing. Like, that's not what you're doing. That's not what they're doing. Like, this is taking advantage, and you're allowing them to do that. Like, why would you send your money that you worked so hard for, that this person has not contributed to get you to where you are today, and you're giving it to them every month? Like, what is that about? And I realized in this last week or so that the reason why I do that is because he wasn't around. It's almost like I want him to pat me on the back and say, good job. You grew up well. And I just didn't know that. And so what I realized too is that even with him, I had started to get to a point where I was starting to resent the fact that like he was getting my money. I remember adding it all up, thinking to myself, I have given you more money in the last year than you have given me for the duration of my life, right? And I was like really upset about that. And I was growing a lot of resentment about that. But what I now realize is that he didn't ask for all that money. There was one time where he was having a hard time. He asked me, he said, I just need some money, whatever you can spare. And I had felt bad. I had felt pity for him at that time. I had felt pity because I thought to myself, you created all these families, because he was, as my fiance would call, apparently they say in Korea, a windy boy. You created all these families, and like now no one is coming to see about you. And so I felt pity. And so I helped him at that time. But for some reason, in the beginning, because I felt so much pity, I would just send him money reoccurringly, but he never asked me for it. He never asked me for it. I always did it on my own, but then somehow was resentful towards him for taking it when he never asked for it to begin with. And what I realized was I had the opportunity at that moment to say no, and I didn't do it. Why? That the situations I have gotten myself into are not because of these people. It's because of me. Because I didn't have enough discernment at that time to either one, assess whether or not they should have it. Because again, I have the ability to choose which scales I want to balance. And when it comes to like my father, for example, those scales have been unbalanced since I was a child, right? They have never been balanced. And if you know the scale is like this, and even if that person contacts you and they ask you for a little bit of money and the scale is like this, I had the ability to choose whether or not I wanted that to balance. And if it was so out of whack in the first place, why did I even decide to try to balance it anyway? It's a scale that will never balance. There will never be anything that person can do that makes me feel like, okay, we're good now. It'll never balance, right? But I had the ability to make a decision at that time, to discern at that time whether or not I wanted it to balance. And for some reason, I tried to balance it. And it ended up being of detriment to me, even though I blamed them when they never asked for it in the first place. They never asked for the scales to balance. And that was a poor judgment on my end. That was poor discernment on my end. I could have just said no. And did I pity that person really? Or was I really pitying myself? And then through the action of giving them money all the time, was that my way of seeking their approval or my approval? And then so reflecting back to the situation I just had now, where this person was Zelle requesting me all of this money, or asking, not really asking, more so demanding all of this money for me, it's the same thing. The scales weren't balanced to begin with. So why did I think I had the ability to balance them? Because me and this person also have history too, by the way. It's not like this wasn't like a one-off thing. This is not like the first time there was like an issue with money. Like this is a thing, right? So again, the scales are unbalanced. If I knew walking into that the scales were unbalanced, why didn't I have better discernment? Why did I go into the situation thinking, oh, it'll be fine now. They'll balance now. How? They're not close enough. They're nowhere close to being balanced. And I had the ability to make that decision for myself. And I realized this. The reason why this epiphany is popping up everywhere is because my fiance said to me, Rokuna. He was like, essentially what he said, he was like, this is necessary. He was so calm about it. So I'm upset. I'm like, oh my God, my money. I'm like, oh my God, they're taking advantage of me. Can you believe they said this to me? And he was like, this is necessary. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, this person has taken advantage of me. And then they hurt my feelings in the process. What are you talking about? He was like, because you won't learn. Like, you will continue to do this until something like this happens. This is necessary. And then he was like, don't worry. After we get married, he was like, I'll stop all of that. You don't even have to worry about it. But he was like, but for right now, because we're not married yet, he was like, this was necessary. And it was because he said that to me. First of all, I walked away from that conversation a little peeved because I was like, whose side are you on, right? But then when I thought about it, I was like, oh no, he's right. Because I wouldn't have been able to see it. If that person didn't stop and then essentially scold me, because I wasn't where they wanted to be when they wanted me to be there, I would have continued. I would have continued giving that person money. I would have continued giving that person my time, my effort, my energy, and there would have never been a period of time where it would have been appreciated. Why? Because the scales were already too unbalanced to begin with. And I knew that going into it. But I wouldn't have been able to see that if it did not happen. And my lesson that I know now is that I have the ability, as do you, to choose when I want the scales to balance or not. And if you are someone that's like good karma this, bad karma this, what goes around comes around, if you're the type of person who maybe does things for people because even if you don't want to, because you feel like, the scales will balance out at some point in time, right? It's almost like depositing, money into like this metaphorical savings account, right? Making little deposits here and there because you feel like one day you'll be in need, and that when you're in need, that one day the angel will show up and assist you because you made all of these deposits prior to that, right? It's a form of people pleasing. It's a form of searching for approval. And I expect that there are a number of you that probably do that if you're watching this video, because like energy attracts like energy. And I've noticed with you all, we have a tendency to experience the same things or go through the same things around the same time with each other. And so, but like, if like that's where you are, know that things do balance out, and like there's like a cycle and what goes around comes around, but you actually have the ability to decide what you want to come back around. You have the ability to decide who you want to come back around, what comes back around. It's not so far out of your control where it's just like the universe spinning this wheel and the universe is making this decision and you kind of get what you get, and it's like by chance. Because we're co-creators, we have the ability to make the decision about what we want to come back around. Even with this person, this most recent person that I was just telling you about, what goes around comes around, and because I helped this person Am I likely to get help in the future if I need it? Sure. But would I want that person's help to begin with? Particularly if I know that it's not necessarily always that genuine. And particularly because I know it's never really has been. And if I do want that person's help, why? What unresolved trauma or shadow aspects still reside to the point where where I can't separate from that? Where is the codependency coming from? Why can't I just release it? If I already know it's not something I really want anyway, because maybe it's not healthy for me, maybe it's not for my greater good, maybe it's just like not convenient. Maybe it's not that the person is a bad person. Maybe it's just like not convenient for me and my lifestyle or the way I want to live, right? And so then why? Why am I still worried about this particular situation and this particular person with the hopes that like something good will come out of it? Why? The skills were already too unbalanced to begin with. I had the ability to act on that. I knew that the skills were unbalanced. I had the information going into it, but my discernment wasn't right. And I ended up being the one that was hurt on the end because of my discernment not being right. And why wasn't it right when I had all the information? And so what I've learned from this now is before I say yes to anything, to wait 24 hours. That's going to be my new thing that I'm going to start incorporating into my life. Wait 24 hours. Give me a day. Give me a day. Nothing is really that big of an emergency. If no one is in a hospital or on a stretcher, it's not an emergency and you can give me a day. And if you get upset with me because I asked you for a day to think about it, then your intentions with me were never pure to begin with. Give me a day. Instead of being so fast and so reactionary. Because part of my being reactionary to things like this is in my mind, I think I'm solving a problem. Growing up, because we had limited resources, things would happen and I would watch my mother not being able to solve the problem. And it would crush her because she wanted to. And then so what's happened is I've grown up into an adult and now my thing is being a provider. And I don't know, that may sound weird coming out of a woman that's actually saying that, even though many women are actually the providers in the family or whatever. For when it comes to like my family, it's not being a provider. And all of that's being challenged now with my relationship where my fiance is now like, okay, that's cute. You did a great job. Go sit down. I'm now taking over, which is great. I really appreciate that. But with that means that I now have to unravel all of the patterns that I have somehow created. I have to unravel why this thing kicks in about me needing to be a provider, particularly for other people. When the majority of the time, those people were not providers for me. Why am I a provider for you? And then I'm mad because I'm walking away with less resources. I had the ability to make a decision. My discernment wasn't great because it was clouded by childhood trauma and unresolved issues that reside in the shadow that I just wasn't privy to before. And so, I share that aspect of me because one, it's not, I hope no one's watching this going, oh my God, Mr. Grant, it's really not like something where I feel like needs to be like that big of a deal because it was a learning experience. And I hope that like maybe you could live vicariously through me and like learn with me so you don't have to go through that situation. And if you have already been in that situation, I hope that you maybe one, recognize that like you're not doing it by yourself, that like other people are going through that same thing as well. Two, you're not crazy, right? But I also want all of us to just like learn together with this. You know what I mean? I learned it, right? So some of you watching don't have to learn it on your own, right? We can have the ability to choose which scale we want to balance. We're not subjected to the scale. We are the scale. Right? And so if you think about like tarot, for example, and you think about the justice card, sometimes when we read it, we think about the scale that's balancing out for us, right? The universe finding justice in our situation for us. It never occurs to us to be the one holding the scale in the first place. Let's just sit with that for a minute, right? Like, why can't we hold the scale? Why can't we choose whether or not it balances? Because it comes up with a lot of other stuff. Approval, the fear of, if you don't get the approval, losing people, right? Sometimes we engage in that kind of stuff, those cycles, because we feel like if we don't, that person may walk out of our life. That's a thing. And if that's the case, then examining, why are we afraid for that person to walk out of our life? If that person is willing to walk out of the life because they are no longer able to take advantage of us, then shouldn't we let them go? Shouldn't we let them continue to walk? Because that means that the intentions they had towards us weren't genuine or pure to begin with. And why do we want that around us? There's a lot of us like that, who have people who we don't want to leave our lives, who are toxic, and we know it. But for whatever reason, we don't want them to go. It could be love. It could be a fear of being alone. It could be you just known them for an incredibly long time. It could be because you think that maybe you could fix it, but deep down you know that it would take a lot in order to be able to resolve it, a lot that you just don't have. For whatever reason, we a lot of the times have a tendency to hold on to people that threaten to leave if we don't do certain things. People end up in relationships like this all the time, where people are like, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, I'm leaving you, we're breaking up. And so you do it because you're trying to keep them. But why do we do that? Just let them walk away. Because if it makes us lighter, it frees up the energy in our space to let people that actually want to be there come in, right? And all that energy that's not actually for us, that's not actually meant for our greatest good, can go. So we should let it go, right? We should hold the scale. We should be the one deciding whether or not it's balanced or not. And if they want to tip the scale too far, we should have enough resolve within ourselves to say, all right, done. We're done now. I love you, but with love, I am dismissing it. And be okay with that. And that's a journey within itself, because that requires us to come to terms with maybe that person not being in our life, or that person not being in our life in the way that we had initially hoped that they would be, right? But we also have to do it knowing that them being there, at least right now, it doesn't mean that they won't come back, right, into the space, but at least right now is not healthy for us. It's not meant for us, and it's not, for whatever reason, in energetic alignment. So that is what I have learned. It's all happened within this week too. Literally starting from, I think, Saturday, and the time of this recording, I think it's what day is it? Today is Friday. And so this week you'll maybe see it Saturday or Sunday. I don't know. I'm spitting out days like it matters to you. So for people that'll stumble across this video in like a month or two, like that, none of that matters. So I don't even know why I'm going into it. But I just learned this all recently, and so it's fresh and so it's raw, and that's why I am sharing it with you. There's a flip side to this though. The flip side of this is that I feel so grateful and I feel so blessed that I even had the resources to give away. And I think that some parts of me may have felt guilty for that, even though I have worked hard. I have worked hard to get to this place in my life. I have been just clawing at it since I was let out of the gate. And so I have managed to accomplish some things, and not everyone agrees with it. Not everyone's happy for me. And so I think I take that sometimes, and in efforts to humble myself, because people say you should be humble, right? And to humble myself, I give things away. But what I've learned now is that, one, you have accomplished really beautiful things. I have, because you even had enough disposable in order to give it away. But two, now that I recognize that, I don't have to give it away anymore. And I think that this applies to all of you too, because it's not just about resources or material things. Sometimes it's just about our love or our kindness. Sometimes we give too much of that away. But the blessing in that is that we have it to give in the first place. And once we know that we have it to give, we can then give it back to ourselves in order to fill our cup up even more, right? So now that I know I can do this, I can now redirect it to me in order to have a bigger cup. And how fun is that, right? When it comes to maybe giving too much love away, we all know what it feels like to be in a relationship or a situationship these days where you give too much of yourself to somebody and they just run off with it. And what I've learned now is, you know what? There's no such thing as running off with my heart anymore. If I ever loved you at any point in time, that was yours to have. I gave it to you because I wanted to. But now that I realized that it was disposable and I had enough to share, now I know that I can turn that back inwards. When it comes to being kind to people, now that I know that maybe sometimes I'm a little bit too kind, right? Not everybody deserves it, right? The amount of times where someone will say something to you or do something to you and in your mind you're like, oh, I could really go there, but I'm not going to today. That's kind. But now that I know that it's disposable, I can turn it inward and be kind to myself even more or again, right? And then if I redirect all of that I have been pushing out, how full would my own cup be? Instead of letting people drink from my cup that never deserved a sip in the first place. So I'm going to leave you with that because I have been rambling for a long time. Thank you for listening to me if you even made it this far in this video. And I hope that through my experience, there are things that for you are now illuminated or highlighted or explained. And as always, I hope that me sharing that was actually helpful for you. I'm going to end the video here. Please like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you all soon.